The night before our wedding, Sarah told me she was heading out for her bridal makeup trial. I questioned whether it wasn't too early to do that now. She planted a kiss on my cheek and said playfully, "I'm going to be your wife tomorrow, don't you trust me? Grace is coming with me, you can ask her yourself if you don't believe me." Grace was her best friend, and I did verify this on her social media. But midnight came and went with no sign of Sarah. Growing increasingly uneasy, I logged into my alternate account to check Eric's social media. He had posted an update just recently. The post showed Sarah in a red traditional Chinese wedding dress and Grace in a white Western wedding gown, both attending to him in a luxury hotel suite. His caption read, "Tomorrow you'll be another man's wife, but tonight you're my bride alone." As I stared at the enlarged photos on my phone, my heart felt like it was being crushed in a vice, leaving me gasping for air. Eric, the man both Sarah and Grace had pursued before me. If I hadn't added him on my alternate account earlier, I might have walked into tomorrow thinking I was the luckiest man alive. After years of dedication, she owed me at least an explanation. But as I clutched my phone into the early hours, all I received was her message, "See you at the ceremony tomorrow, everything's ready." If she truly loved someone else, why drag me along? What did I even mean to her? Looking around at the festively decorated room, I could only shake my head with a bitter smile. I sighed and sent her one final message. "Wedding's off. We're done." I turned off my phone after sending it, not caring whether she saw it or not. Once I discovered her infidelity and betrayal sharing another man with someone else, I knew there was no future for us. I couldn't stomach such behavior. Despite our 4 years together, the pain cut deep and tears flowed freely. As I methodically removed the decorations and gathered up the scattered red rose petals, I couldn't help but reflect on our relationship, how I'd given everything yet still found no happiness. Sarah was beautiful and talented, having started her own company after graduation. Though not a large enterprise, it showed steady growth. Among our peers, she was considered highly successful. So when news of our engagement spread, many thought I was punching above my weight. They advised me to be the supportive husband behind a successful woman, taking care of the household. Especially Grace, who repeatedly warned me to treat her well, or else. They didn't need to tell me I understood her hard work and always strived to be a good boyfriend. I had planned to be an even better husband, shouldering more of her burdens to ease her stress. But while I was trying to be my best self, she fell into another man's arms. In love, I can be accommodating and yielding, but only when happiness is the foundation. When it comes to betrayal, I have zero tolerance. After all, some lines, once crossed, will be crossed again and again. I wasn't willing to take that gamble. We had only invited family and close friends to the wedding, so I sent messages explaining the situation. When my parents heard about the last-minute cancellation, they urged me to reconsider, to think about my responsibilities to the bride's family. I had no choice but to tell them everything. After a long silence, they said, "If that's the case, do what you believe is right." Soon, I had stripped away all the wedding decorations from our apartment. Every trace of celebration vanished. Perhaps from exhaustion, I fell into a deep sleep that night. When I opened my eyes, the sun was already high in the sky. Someone was pounding on my door furiously, and though it woke me, I chose to ignore it. I had made the wedding cancellation crystal clear. If she hadn't seen it, that was her problem. After such a betrayal, she should have expected this outcome. But unexpectedly, after the others left, Sarah came to find me herself. She stood outside my door looking exhausted, her eyes full of reproach. After studying my just-woken appearance for a moment, her face darkened with anger. "Alex, when will you ever grow up? How dare you treat marriage like some kind of joke?" Her voice was hoarse, her tone accusatory. This woman who should have been my beautiful bride now only filled me with disgust. I responded coldly, "Who really needs to grow up? Weren't you the one who destroyed this wedding, Miss Lynn?" Sarah frowned, seemingly confused by my words. She sighed at my childish behavior, her tone softening. "Come on, stop this nonsense. I am exhausted." Exhausted. Of course she was tired after spending the night with another man behind her fiancé's back. Even now, she wouldn't explain her actions from last night. 4 years of love didn't seem so hard to let go of anymore, it just seemed laughable now. "Oh really? And what then?" I moved to push her away and close the door. She quickly blocked it with her hand, trying to fall into my embrace. I shoved her back forcefully, shouting, "Get away from me." She froze, staring at me with utter disbelief. In 4 years, I had never spoken to her with such harshness. Perhaps she never imagined I would ever treat her this way. "Alex, you're actually yelling at me." Her shocked expression seemed almost comical to me now. "Sarah, I told you last night the wedding was cancelled. I guess you must have forgotten your phone somewhere. If you want to keep your reputation intact, don't come looking for me again, got it?" After my cold words, I pushed her out the door. But her hand got caught in the doorframe as it closed, catching her fingers with a sharp slam. They began swelling immediately. I quickly reopened the door and she burst into tears. "Alex, what's gotten into you? Leaving me stranded at the wedding venue wasn't enough. I had to apologize to all those guests. I'm completely exhausted. What do you want from me? Can't we just talk this through?" Though she was a strong career woman, her tears made her seem fragile and helpless. In the past, I would have dropped everything to hold her and whisper comfort. But now it all seemed like an act. If she hadn't suddenly reached for the door, she wouldn't be hurt. Looking straight into her eyes, I said, "Sarah, what's left to discuss? Want to share the details of your hotel adventures? I don't want to hear your excuses. I'm not as cheap as you." Sarah's face instantly darkened and she spat through gritted teeth. "What are you implying? You have such a filthy mind." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Right, I'm the one with the filthy mind, not you, the pure and pristine white flower. Clearly only Eric deserves someone as pure as you, no one else measures up." Sarah's tears stopped, her eyes darting nervously. After several deep breaths, as if suppressing her rage, she said with a trembling voice, "Let's put this aside for now. Come back with me to have dinner with Mom and Dad. You at least owe them an explanation for today." At this, I hesitated. Sarah's parents were gentle, kind-hearted people, completely different from her character. I wondered how Sarah had turned out this way, growing up in such a loving family. Her parents had always treated me like their own son, which was one reason I'd thought myself the luckiest man alive. Because they were good to me, I'd been even better to Sarah. In our daily life, I catered to her every wish, never letting her worry about any practical matters. My sincere devotion was repaid with her betrayal. Laughable. But she was right about one thing. I owed her parents an explanation about today. When she heard me agree, Sarah's face showed a hint of relief. But when I said I'd drive there separately, her expression darkened again. Her eyes filled with complex emotions as she watched me. I didn't care what she thought anymore. I just wanted to get this over with quickly. To cut all ties with Sarah after this. Sarah's parents lived in a suburban villa with a small front yard. They usually cooked with the door open, and I could hear voices before even entering. "Old Lynn, our daughter says Alex is almost here. Hurry and get some of his favorite fruit." I completely forgot about that. "Quick." Her mother's voice still carried warmth, seemingly untouched by today's events. Yes, I'm going right now." Her father quickly agreed, then rushed out the door, running into me. "Alex, your auntie was just asking about you. Go on inside and sit down. I'll be right back after getting a few things." He spoke with a smile, as if this were just another family dinner. I'd expected today's events would have angered them, but they were still so warm toward me. This made me feel somewhat ashamed. I used to bring small gifts whenever I visited and eagerly offered to help with anything needed, but now I didn't even know how to address them anymore. I could only manage an awkward smile without speaking. Sarah arrived after me, automatically taking slippers from the shoe cabinet for me. I glanced at them and nodded slightly. "Thanks." What did you say?" Sarah stared at me in disbelief, as if she couldn't comprehend this sudden formality. I ignored her and walked to the living room after changing shoes. Her mother was just bringing out dishes, and when she saw me, her face lit up as if seeing a long-awaited son return home. "Alex is here. Sit down for a bit. Dinner will be ready soon." I didn't know what to say and could only respond with a faint smile. The Lynn's warm welcome created an unsettling illusion that today's wedding disaster had never happened. This only made my emotions more complicated. But even so, it wouldn't change my resolve to end things with Sarah. Feeling that any words would be inappropriate, I simply sat quietly on the living room sofa. Sarah, who never helped with housework, merely poured me a glass of juice and set it before me. "Why are you being so formal today?" She sat beside me, smiling. "Just being a proper guest," I replied flatly. Sarah's smile faltered and she deliberately added, still so distant, "We're about to be family." "No, we're not." My tone hardened as I emphasized, "We broke up last night." Sarah's dark eyes flickered, her lips pressed tight as if holding back words that never came. The atmosphere instantly chilled and I pretended to focus on the TV. Even after years of love, certain truths still hurt when spoken aloud. Amid this tension, the doorbell rang, followed by Eric's voice. "Sarah, uncle, auntie, open up." Sarah froze momentarily, glancing at me nervously. Seeing my indifference, she rose to answer the door. Perfect timing. Just in time for dinner. "Auntie, what amazing dish are you cooking? I can smell it from the gate." Eric's voice preceded his arrival. Then he seemed to suddenly notice my presence. "Hey Alex, you're here too." The sight of Eric brought back last night's revolting memories, making me nauseous. At the dinner table, Eric sat beside Sarah, while I faced them across the table. I noticed their matching necklaces and laughed bitterly inside. Sarah had once proudly shown me that necklace, asking my opinion. I'd assumed it was from her girlfriends, not realizing it was from her good friend, Eric. Sarah, don't just eat yourself, serve some food for Alex. Mrs. Lin, noticing my reserve, wanted Sarah to look after me. But Sarah's brows furrowed, her eyes betraying clear reluctance. I remembered my first dinner here, when Mrs. Lin had made the same request. Sarah had reacted strongly then, claiming it was unhygienic and unacceptable. That's disgusting, he can serve himself, he's not helpless. Those words from that day now carried a bitter irony. I'd been so awkward then, grateful when her parents changed the subject. Even now, Sarah hadn't changed. But I had, and I no longer expected anything from her. Please don't trouble yourself, I can manage. I smiled politely. Mrs. Lin's expression flickered before she shot Sarah a disapproving look. Eric noticed this, his smirk growing more pronounced. He eagerly placed a piece of fish in Sarah's bowl, grinning. Sarah, you love fish, have some more. I expected her usual disgust, but she merely blinked, showing no resistance. She ate it naturally, as if her previous protests had never existed. Perhaps I was the only one she truly found disgusting. Watching this, my heart grew colder, not because of her, but because of my own blindness. How could I have loved someone like this for so long? If not for the Lin's continued warmth and kindness, I might have flipped the table and unleashed my fury. How could people be so utterly shameless? Mrs. Lin observed their behavior and said firmly to Sarah, Sarah, can't you show some basic courtesy? She followed with several pointed looks at her daughter. I wanted to refuse, now repulsed by anything from Sarah. But she had already sullenly dropped a fish head in my bowl, eyebrows raised as if granting me a favor. It was her favorite part, yet she'd conveniently forgotten my severe fish allergy. I barely spoke during the meal, keeping my focus on my food. Eric constantly served Sarah dishes and kept her entertained, their laughter and chat flowing freely. Finally, I'd finished every grain of rice, but the fish head remained untouched, a glaring reminder in my bowl. I'm finished, thank you for the meal, Mr. and Mrs. Lin. I looked at them earnestly and continued, I came today primarily to explain about today's events. The Lins exchanged glances, setting down their chopsticks and watching me anxiously. Actually, I messaged Sarah yesterday canceling the wedding. I've decided to end our relationship. I'm sorry to have disappointed your expectations. They sat stunned, words failing them. I added quietly, as for why, you can ask Sarah. Sarah's frown deepened as she demanded, Alex, how long are you going to keep this up? I've told you countless times, Eric and I are just good friends, why can't you let this go? At this, Eric's smile froze mid-expression. Even now, she was making excuses, and I saw no point in further argument. Mr. and Mrs. Lin, thank you again for your hospitality. I should go. Perhaps we can have dinner another time. I stood to leave, and they didn't try to stop me. The tension was palpable, they must have sensed the finality of it all. Mr. Lin still walked me to the door, saying softly, Alex, we both care about you very much. You're always welcome here. I politely agreed, though we all knew such opportunities would never come again. Back in my car, I messaged my best friend, Zach. We met shortly after at a local bar. Alex, what's going on? No wedding, and you're drinking again? Zach poured me a drink, his usual cynical smile in place. The bitterness in my heart made me drain the glass in one go. Exhaling heavily, I said simply, it's over. Zach didn't look particularly surprised, just asked, what happened? The memory of that photo felt like a stone crushing my chest, making it hard to breathe. Seeing my silence, Zach's expression turned knowing. Hell, she cheated on you, didn't she? I gave a bitter laugh, confirmation enough. Zach poured another drink, muttering, damn it, I knew it. That woman was trouble from the start. Just looking for someone to settle down with after having her fun. But you were so crazy about her then, wouldn't hear a word against her. I smiled wryly, and it wasn't just her alone. Every time I think about it now, it turns my stomach. I emptied another glass. Zach's smile faded, his eyes darkening with understanding. Finally, he sighed deeply and said earnestly, look, better to find out now and dodge that bullet. The right person is still out there waiting for you. We drank heavily that night until the alcohol numbed the pain. I'd nearly stopped drinking when Sarah said she didn't like it. Now my tolerance was shot, and I passed out as soon as I got home. Actually slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I felt surprisingly lighter. After taking a day off, I returned to work as usual. Many colleagues knew about the wedding plans and offered congratulations when they saw me. Amid their warm wishes, I felt strangely hollow. It seemed like just yesterday, I was happily handing out wedding candies, sharing my joy. Now I'd returned having experienced betrayal, deception, a cancelled wedding, and a broken relationship. Alex, the manager position is open, and you're probably the front runner. But since you just got married and you'll likely need paternity leave soon, missing this chance might mean waiting ages for another shot. My colleague, Lee, approached during lunch to quietly share this news. He had a point. I'd been wrestling with this. After 3 years at the company, this was a rare opportunity. But I'd been more focused on marrying Sarah, something I'd dreamed of for 4 years. Now that wasn't an issue anymore. Career comes first. Of course I'm going for it. Lee seemed taken aback, asking, no plans for kids soon? Not wanting to explain, I just said, I need to do this for myself. Lee paused, then nodded approvingly. You're right, go after what you want. In the following days, I threw myself into work with new intensity. For 2 weeks, Sarah barely crossed my mind. We hadn't contacted each other. I thought it was finished until we met again. I was just getting home from work. A woman in a form-fitting dress stood at my doorstep. She held a massive bouquet of roses, anxiously checking her phone. There was no avoiding her, so I approached. She heard my steps and turned, her face clouding when she saw me. Alex, have you been avoiding me? I glanced at her indifferently, saying, nothing to avoid. We're done, I'm living my life. Don't come here anymore. Move, I need to get inside. Sarah quickly pressed against the door, eyes fixed on me. Can we stop this? I'm sorry about that day, I was wrong. I looked at her in surprise. In all our past arguments, she'd never admitted fault, always shifting blame to me. I would brood alone until the matter faded away. This apology wasn't from genuine remorse, but because she sensed my resolve to end things. Looking at this beautiful woman before me, I only felt revulsion and the need to escape. Taking a deep breath, I said evenly, Sarah, we've finished. This is pointless. Let's go our separate ways and not interfere in each other's lives anymore, okay? Sarah's eyes instantly reddened, tears threatening. Alex, I don't want to break up. Please don't do this. My parents love you. We can forget about the wedding incident, just focus on our future together. I stared at this woman I'd loved for 4 years. She came to apologize because her parents liked me and wanted her to marry me. How pathetic. What had I ever meant to her? When I spoke again, my voice shook. Sarah, your parents sent you here, didn't they? She bit her lip, avoiding my eyes, silent. Sarah, do you realize how fake you are? She froze and used to such direct criticism. After all, she'd grown up privileged, everyone's beloved princess, proud of her looks and status. She was used to endless praise, never harsh truths. Alex, that's crossing a line. I continued undeterred. Sarah, in all our years together, you never understood what I wanted. She arched an eyebrow, voice rising. Then tell me what you want. How can I give it if you won't say it? I couldn't help but laugh. Finally, meeting her surprised eyes, I said, even if I told you, you couldn't give it. What I wanted was her complete love, her loyalty and devotion, her heart to hold only me. These were the most basic elements of love, but she couldn't give them. Simply because she didn't love me. Realizing this, I had no desire to continue. Move aside, I need to get in. I pushed past her toward the door. But quickly, her hand pressed against it, her eyes locking onto mine. Then tell me, what is it I can't give you? Before I could answer, her phone rang. After a pause, I said, aren't you going to get that? She held my gaze for a moment, set down the flowers, and pulled out her phone. The screen showed the caller. Eric. Sarah looked at me awkwardly, frozen between answering and ignoring the call. Still putting on an act, how laughable. Better answer, it might be urgent. She bit her lip, saying, just wait a moment, I'll be quick. She walked away as she answered. Taking my chance, I quickly slipped inside and closed the door. The click of her heels stopped, then quickly faded into silence. The hallway remained quiet, almost too quiet. I'd seen this coming, but it didn't make the ache in my chest any easier to bear. The next morning, I stepped outside. The bouquet still lay there, its vibrant colors from yesterday now faded and wilted. Just like my feelings for her, what once bloomed bright had rotted from within. I picked up the flowers and dropped them in the dumpster downstairs. Such gorgeous flowers, you're throwing them away already? The cleaning lady asked, flashing a friendly smile. I smiled back. Yes, time to let them go. Some things might look perfect on the outside but be completely broken inside, and when that happens, you have to let them go. Then Sarah started showing up at my workplace, of all places. Now that I'd stopped loving her, she began doing all the things she'd once considered beneath her. Morning porridge, lunch deliveries, afternoon tea like clockwork. She'd turned into my personal delivery service, always perfectly on time with food. Sometimes she'd bring flowers too. Sarah used to say getting flowers was the height of romance. I don't feel that way anymore. It's only romantic when they come from someone whose heart beats for yours. Her behavior had my coworkers swooning with envy. Alex, your wife is absolutely amazing. You're such a lucky guy. Thanks for sharing the afternoon tea wealth with us. Your wife is so thoughtful. Man, I'd trade a mansion and a sports car for a girlfriend like that. I'd just smile at their comments, never saying much. I've always kept my personal life separate from work. Sarah's grand gestures were actually causing problems. While some coworkers were envious, others were clearly uncomfortable with the situation. But that's Sarah, always doing exactly what she wants. Never asking for input, never considering how others might feel, just barreling ahead with whatever she thinks is right. I didn't bother saying anything though. If she wanted to play delivery girl, that was her choice. Her time, her money. It didn't really affect my life. I stayed focused on my work, enjoying my independence. No compromises to make, no one to answer to. It felt liberating. But the peace didn't last. Mrs. Lin called to invite me to her birthday dinner. Given the awkward situation and the chance of seeing Sarah, I politely declined. Right then, Eric called to invite me for dinner and drinks at this cool music restaurant. I'd been buried in work lately and had just wrapped up a big project. Some downtime sounded perfect. I got ready quickly and headed to meet Eric. He wasn't there yet, so I asked to be shown to a private room. As I walked past one of the rooms, familiar voices stopped me cold. Sarah, why are you degrading yourself begging for his attention? Just be with me instead. We could be together openly. No more sneaking around, no more fear of getting caught. I couldn't see Sarah's face, but her shoulders were shaking like she was crying. The irony wasn't lost on me. Back then, Eric had his pick of women and had turned down both Sarah and Grace. Now here he was, trying to collect them both years later. Eric, we agreed that night was the last time. Sarah's voice quivered. Once I'm married, this has to stop. Eric's face darkened with frustration. Sarah, be honest, you're only marrying Alex because your parents love him. Do you even love him at all? My heart clenched as Sarah's silence stretched on. But her silence said everything. Just as I turned to leave, a cheerful voice called out, Alex, is that really you? I turned to find Mr. and Mrs. Lin beaming at me. Grace stood beside them carrying packages, shooting me a knowing smirk. Before I could respond, Sarah rushed over, panic clear in her voice. Alex, how long have you been here? Eric had gone dead silent, looking at me with barely concealed fear. I gave them both a cold look. Long enough to hear the confession, I think. Sarah's face drained of color as she whirled to glare at Eric. Mr. and Mrs. Lin's smiles faded as understanding dawned. I needed to get out of there. Happy birthday, Mrs. Lin. I actually had plans to meet a friend here. What a coincidence. Sorry, I didn't bring a gift. I should go find my friend now. I'll make it up to you another time. Mrs. Lin tried to salvage the situation. Alex, since you're already here. I cut her off gently but firmly. Mr. and Mrs. Lin, some truths can't be unseen once they're exposed. Sarah and I are done. Those two seem perfect for each other. Maybe it's time for you to give them your blessing. I walked away before they could respond. Outside, a light rain had started falling. The restaurant's singer had switched to a melancholy love song, twisting the knife in my already aching heart. I caught a taxi home, stopping to grab a case of beer from the corner store. I sat on my couch, drinking one after another, drowning in 4 years of memories. The alcohol hit me harder than expected. I'd thought I was stronger than this, but the tears came anyway. Letting go of a years-long relationship feels like carving out a piece of your soul. But somehow, crying made the weight a little lighter. I was drifting off on the couch when Eric's call jolted me awake. It took me a few tries to answer. Alex, where are you? We've been waiting forever. The girls are getting impatient. I'd completely forgotten to tell him I'd left. Wasn't feeling great, went home. My voice must have given me away because Eric's tone changed instantly. The playfulness vanished. Get some rest then. After a pause, he added, when you're ready, I'll introduce you to some women. Best way to get over someone is to get under someone new. I had to laugh. Not everyone can be a player like you. I'm just going to focus on my career, work on becoming a better version of myself. The silence stretched for a moment before his cheerful tone returned. Fair enough. But when you want to have some fun, just say the word. I'll set everything up. I hung up and finally let sleep take me. I woke up feeling lighter, like some of the weight had lifted from my chest. My phone was full of messages from Mrs. Lin, all concern and worry, and angry texts from Grace, rushing to defend her bestie's honor. I didn't bother responding. Just blocked them all. Sarah and I were done, no going back. And that meant cutting ties with her family too. Sometimes the only way forward is to delete the past. I threw myself into work with a vengeance, becoming that guy who lives at the office. My world shrank to just 2 points, home and work. 2 weeks into my new routine, I got tapped to represent the company at a major project negotiation out of town. My new secretary handled all the arrangements. She hadn't been with me long, but she was scary competent at her job. That's why I'd fought to keep her on my team. But even the best make mistakes, and this business trip revealed hers. Mr. Tang, I'm so sorry, Jo whispered, her head bowed. I'm just used to booking double rooms when I travel with my girlfriends. The hotel receptionist explained apologetically that with the recent storms, every hotel in the city was packed. I massaged my temples. We'll manage for tonight. If the weather breaks tomorrow, I'll find another room. Jo was clearly uncomfortable as we entered the room, so I improvised a barrier between the beds. Not much, but at least it was something. While I was reviewing documents at the desk, Jo approached hesitantly. Mr. Tang, would it be okay if I let my family know about this situation? I glanced up and nodded. That's probably smart. A man and woman sharing a room, people might talk. Better to be upfront about it. Front desk says someone's checking out tomorrow afternoon. I'll move then. With my okay, Jo immediately called her parents. They were not happy. I got an earful of warnings and threats. I got it, I'm a dad's worst nightmare in this situation. So I stayed patient, promising over and over that their daughter was safe with me. After what felt like forever, they calmed down. Mostly, though they made sure to tell Jo to keep her phone handy and call 911 at the first sign of trouble. I couldn't help but sigh. If it weren't for tomorrow morning's crucial meeting, I'd have happily crashed in the lobby. But everything worked out fine in the end. Got a new room the next day, nailed the project negotiations. We headed home after 3 days. At the airport, Jo went to get our parked car, then drove me home. Windows down, night breeze flowing. I dozed off almost immediately. Next thing I knew, we were outside my apartment complex. I grabbed my luggage and went to say goodbye at her window. Next time, check the weather forecast first, I smiled. It's late, get home safe and get some rest. Jo's answering smile was bright. Will do. See you tomorrow. I waved as she drove off. But when I turned toward home, I ran into an ambush. Sarah's face was flushed with anger, her voice shaking. You went to a hotel with her, didn't you, Alex? How could you do this to me? Grace tried to slap me, but I caught her hand. I used to defend you, Alex. Said you were one of the good ones. But first you ditched the wedding, now you're sneaking around with other women. Have you no shame at all? Grace jabbed her finger in my face, acting all high and mighty as if her own secrets made her any better. I was thrown for a second, then it clicked. I'd only told Chu Fan about that night, looked like he'd decided to help me even the score. I met their accusations with ice in my voice. What I do stopped being your business when Sarah and I broke up. Unless you really want me to start telling truths nobody wants to hear. You. Sarah's eyes went red, tears threatening. Is this revenge, Alex? Is that what this is? I brushed past her toward my building, tossing back. Only dirty minds see dirt everywhere they look. She started to follow but stopped, grabbing Grace, who looked ready to come after me. Guess she finally understood how I felt that night at the restaurant. But the next morning, she was waiting by my car. I got your favorite dumplings, she said, holding out the box. From that place you love. I walked right past her to my car door. Truth is, I never liked those dumplings. She did. She'd buy them, eat half, then pawn the rest off on me. I just pretended to love them. Now even the sight of them turned my stomach. When I got in the car, she blocked the door before I could close it. What do you want, Sarah? Isn't letting you go enough? She looked at me with pleading eyes, voice thick with tears. I know I messed up, Alex. I'm so sorry. What will it take for you to forgive me? I let out a tired sigh. Want to know the truth, Sarah? I regret ever being with you. If I'd known she was still hung up on someone else, I'd never have let myself fall for her. She froze, like I'd slapped her. Her hand dropped from the door. But being with you, she whispered, that was when I was happiest. I had to laugh at that. I drove away without another word. Back at the office, just as I was diving into work, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo, Sarah and Eric together, looking very cozy. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then unblocked Sarah just long enough to send her something special. Both screenshots, this new one and the one from her social media post. My message was simple: stop the stupid games unless you want your life blown up. Then I blocked her again. For good this time. Coffee delivery for the new manager. Jo appeared at my desk, all sunshine and smiles, setting down my cup. Hey, keep it down, I warned quickly. Nothing's official yet, don't start the gossip mill. But her smile just got bigger as she leaned in close. I just shared an elevator with the big boss, she whispered. Trust me, it's happening. Before I could respond, I got summoned to said boss's office. Walking out later, I felt like I was floating. Like every late night, every extra hour, every sacrifice had finally paid off. My phone buzzed on the drive home. Chu Fan. Oh man, you won't believe what I just saw. Sarah and Eric having an epic showdown. And plot twist, Grace took Eric's side. The drama between these three is insane. Really? Chu Fan could barely contain his laughter. Sarah was all I only did those things because you and Grace manipulated me. I just want a normal marriage now, leave me alone. Then Grace jumps in with, we had a deal to share Eric. You backing out ruins his fun. They've been on their knees so long they've forgotten how to stand up straight. It turned my stomach, but the pain was gone. Just disgust now. Sarah didn't matter anymore. Until I parked and there she was. Again. Sarah, seriously, are you going for full-on ghost stalker now? The sight of her made my skin crawl. No point in being nice anymore. But she steamrolled right over me. Alex, I know I messed up, I lost my way. Please, one more chance. I've cut him off completely. We could be so happy together. The proud ice queen, reduced to begging in a parking lot. But wrong is wrong. No amount of sorry fixes that. You know what kills me, Sarah? How you played this perfect ice princess in public while doing such filthy things behind closed doors. And now you have the nerve to beg. After everything. The light died in her eyes as she stammered, I don't know why I just don't know. I couldn't hold back a harsh laugh. 4 years together, Sarah. 4 years, and I never knew who you really were. You're beautiful. You're brilliant. But your heart, your body, they're trash now. There are so many amazing women in this world. Why would I settle for someone like you? I turned away, heading for my building. She grabbed for my hand, tears flowing, but I yanked away like her touch burned. Wiped my sleeve like it was contaminated. Rain started falling. Couldn't tell if her face was wet from tears or rain. Didn't care either way. Maybe this ending was written the moment she kept space in her heart for another man. My phone cut through the moment. Joe's voice came through, slightly shy. Hey Alex, tomorrow's my birthday. Would you maybe want to grab dinner? I found myself smiling. Absolutely. Wouldn't miss it. Weeks later, lounging on a beach in Malaysia, I got a text dump from Chu Fan. Sarah's company's imploding after the scandal. Every deal they had is dead in the water. The contract penalties might actually bankrupt them. Grace's family finally found out everything. She's basically under house arrest now. Word is her dad beats her daily. It's wrecked both their lives and his career. Eric got fired and blacklisted industry-wide. Ended up working as eye candy at some club. Got picked up by this loaded cougar in her 50s until her husband had him hospitalized. Oops. Reading all this, I couldn't help but smile. Sarah's desperate stalking, Grace and Eric's petty revenge, it pushed Chu Fan over the edge. He laid it all out online, every dirty detail, but kept me completely out of it. Alex, this ice cream is amazing and the second one's half off. I looked at the bright-eyed girl holding out ice cream to me, morning sun rising behind her like a halo, doves taking wing in the golden light. Everything was beautiful.